Hey everybody, Backpack Hack here, coming at you with another trail tip. And as you can see, I'm setting up a rather large cabin tent. This is going to be my initial review of the Magellan Lakewood Lodge cabin tent. Now, I was looking for a tent that had a lot of space. Space enough for 6 items. So let's get into those 6 items that I was looking for space for while I set this tent up. Number 1, I was looking for a tent large enough for a sleep system. Yeah, that's kind of obvious, isn't it? But I didn't know whether I was going to go with an air mattress, an air bed, or a cot. So I figured the footprint would be the same on that. So I wanted room for a sleep system. I also wanted room for my GSI Slim Fold camp kitchen. Now I know some of you are going to say, dude, you shouldn't be cooking in your tent. Yeah, I get that, if it's a small tent. But this is a cabin tent, and in fact cabin tents many times will have provisions for a wood-burning stove. So having a fire in a camp tent is not all that big of a deal. Besides, I understand the risks, and if I burn my tent down, it's my fault, not yours. I also want room for a table and chair. Now, some people are going to say, dude, that's a luxury, that's an extravagance. You don't need that in your tent. Probably because we got a picnic table right here. But what happens if it's raining out? Or too windy to enjoy outside, or it's buggy out? I want to be able to live in this tent because I'm going to be setting it up for quite a while. Usually when I set it up for 2 or 3 days. So I want to be able to eat, sleep, and cook inside. So I made sure I had room for a table and chair. The next thing I wanted room for is to have enough room for the totes that I carry my gear in. I have several plastic totes I carry all my gear in when I'm tent camping like this. So I wanted room to have those inside the tent. So I'm not running back and forth between the tent and my truck or my little trailer to get that equipment. Next, I want room for my cooler. I've got a Cold-E cooler, good size, because like I said, I'm going to be using this as a base camp for several days. So I want a good size cooler. And I want dedicated floor space for that cooler. So I'm not taking stuff off of it to access or taking it off something else to access what's underneath. I want dedicated floor space for that cooler. And finally, I wanted room for me. Now, there's a lot of large tents out there. There are tents that are actually bigger than this that I rejected simply because the sides tip in so much that, yeah, it may sleep 12 or 14 or 16 people. But the person on the outside edge is looking at the roof right here. I mean, come on. I don't want to have all my stuff, all my gear in the center of the tent and not be able to walk around it. I want the stuff around the outside of the tent and have enough room for me to stand up. This tent does just that. Now, not only does this tent afford me the room for all that, it affords me room for one more item that's really, truly a luxury. And we'll get to that a little bit later on. But for now, let's get into the nuts and bolts of the review. Now, even though the sun is shining, you can see there by the picnic table that it has been raining. Sun's been coming out, in and out all day since I got the tent set up, but it has been raining. Now, I apologize for the uber wide angle look to this, but this is my fisheye lens. But I'll just give a walk around here. You can see the screen porch here, and then there's 2 large windows on each side, as well as the rainfly covering the whole thing. So let's take a step inside. First off, we'll go through the screen porch, and there are 2 entrances. There is one here, and there is one here, and you can roll this whole thing up and tie it off right here and right here if you wanted to, and open that up. But I've got it closed because it's raining and the flies love to come in. Inside the porch, or the screen porch, this is the 7th item that I found room for, and that is my anti-gravity chair. This is comfortable. If you've never had to sit in one of these, you don't know what you're missing for glamping. But there are 2 doors here. There's a door here and a door here, and each door has a window in it, and you can unzip the door or you can unzip just the window if you want ventilation. So we'll step on in, and I apologize for the mess, but like I say, it's been raining. And the first thing you see is my choice of a sleep system, and that is a cot. This is a I can't think of the brand name of it. I'll pop it up there, but I've got an air mattress on top of the cot and then my sleeping bag. That was one of the things I wanted room for. Another thing I wanted room for is some of my totes and my gear. And you can see that I've got those down here. One of them's underneath the bed right now, or the cot. But there's plenty of room for those. And my GSI Slim Fold Camp Kitchen. I definitely wanted room for that in this tent. I know some people are going to say I shouldn't be cooking in my tent, but I understand the risks and I've never had a problem. Here is my cold e-cooler. There's plenty of room for that. I could easily set it over here if I wanted to, but I decided to set it right here next to the door. So when I do take my shoes on and off, and that's why the floor is so dirty right there, is because I've been coming in and out quite a bit with my shoes. And finally, the last thing, and people will say this is an extravagance and luxury, is my table and chair. And you can see right now I've got it set up for my workstation, for my laptop, because right now I'm downloading a lot of files off of my audio recorder and my camera for these videos. And over here is some more of the totes that I keep my gear in. And I specifically chose this day, or these days, to camp in this weather because I wanted to test this roof, this rainfly. Now the rainfly, this is not the first time I've had this tent out. I had it out a couple of months ago, and I wanted to test it out because it was going to rain. And it did very well considering the circumstances. I looked at the forecast and it said it was going to rain. Decided to go out, give it a try. Middle of the afternoon, I looked at the forecast again, and guess what? No rain. It's like, well, at least I'll get a chance to try the tent out, see how it is to set up. And it isn't that hard to set up. But about 9 o'clock, it started to cloud up, and I checked the forecast, and I checked the radar, and we got hammered. Ended up with 2.5 inches of rain in about 25 minutes. I mean, it just poured. And we had 30 to 40 mile an hour winds. And so if you're wanting to know how this stood up, it was rock solid. Although I do kind of overstake the tents. I mean, I put in extra stakes. I go above and beyond what is required to stake down a tent this size. But it was rock solid. However, when it came to the waterproofing, the rainfly failed me slightly. I felt a few dabs of moisture on my face in the middle of the night, and that woke me up. And when I got up, I might look down here and see just a couple drops of water over here. And then I would see a couple drops of water over here, and then a couple cups of water, or drops of water here on the table. It wasn't bad, considering as much rain as we got. I thought it did admirably for that kind of weather, for the price point that this tent is. So I took it home. A couple weeks later, I set it out in my backyard. Took about 3.5 bottles of, and I can't think of the name of the brand, but it's a spray-on waterproofing material. And that's why I'm trying it out here today in the rain, and to see if I've got it down to where it will hold back the water. I'm going to try to focus in here a little bit. You can see water here on the side wall. There is no windows in the back wall, but you can see the water spots there. And I apologize for bouncing the camera around because I'm not really familiar with this lens, and I have a new gimbal. I've got a motorized gimbal that I'm shooting this with, so I'm not all that familiar with it yet. Bear with me. But anyway, so far I haven't had a drop of water in this tent since taking the time to spray on that aftermarket waterproofing. So hopefully that'll solve the problem. I forgot to mention earlier, there also are 2 gear pockets up here above these front windows. There's one here, and there's one over on the opposite side that are exactly the same. It's just mirror image. Basically, this is a mirror image this way tent. Everything that you see on this half is mirror imaged on this half. But to me, this is how a window should open. When you unzip it, it just falls down. To me, that makes sense. Two reasons. First off, if you just want an instant breeze, bam, you got it. You open the window, you got a breeze. You don't have to unzip it and then roll it up and then somehow fasten it up here. And then if a storm comes up and you want to close the window, you've got to unfasten it and zip it back down. To me, this makes more sense. Now, these do not zip all the way down. You can see the zipper stops here, but the panel goes down to here. This allows you to roll this up and just tuck it out of the way. I like that. That's such a simple concept. I don't understand why most tent manufacturers, or some tent manufacturers, haven't figured that out. I just don't get it. But anyway, if you want to zip it back up, that's all you got to do. Now there is a clip up here, or a fastening system, so if you wanted to, you could do that and maybe open up this window just a little bit. The other intelligent reason I think of doing a window this way is because if you have a rainfly on and it's raining out like it is now, not only can I completely open up the window, but let's say the wind is coming this direction and this part of the window is getting wet. Rain is coming in underneath the rainfly because it's driven by the wind. No problem. I still have a breeze coming through. I still have, if it's a hot, muggy day and raining, I still have a breeze coming through. To me, that makes sense. If you invert this and you can only open up the window partially from the bottom, you defeat the whole purpose of having a screen. I don't get it. Why they don't, why manufacturers don't do it this way. To me, this is so common sense to do it this way. Now, you're probably wondering how this does in the rain. Well, a couple of months ago, I set this up during a tremendous rainstorm, and it had a few leaks. Very, very minor. We ended up having 2.5 inches in about 20 minutes. 2.5 inches of rain in 20 minutes. So right now, in this nice, soft, gentle rain, I'm not having any leaks because I took the time to set this tent back up, and I sealed it up, put some, can't think of the name of it. I'll put a link to it in the description and throw it up here on the screen, but you can see that it is not coming in right now. And one of the nice things about these windows is, or at least the rainfly, is as you look out the window, you can see that it's a little bit dreary outside. But the nice thing is, you can see this overhang right there that keeps that water from coming in. Let me go out and show you what that looks like from the outside. And here is the rainfly. You can see that it sticks out a good 12 inches or so. I'll have to measure it. But what's really nice is it keeps that rain off of the windows, at least during a soft, gentle storm like it is right now. There isn't any overhang on the front, really, to speak of. There is a little bit, but not a whole lot. And of course, in the front here, with this screen, just about any rain is going to come in, and you can see that there are some drops on the screen right there. Well, I got my wish. In the last 5 minutes, it has started to pour. We're under severe thunderstorm warning. And as you can see, and hopefully see and well hear, it is just coming down in buckets. See if I can get a shot outside here. I don't know how well this is going to do in low light because the sun's already gone down. But as you can see, it is just absolutely pouring in here. I should say pouring out there. I'm nice and dry. So far I haven't seen any water, but we'll have to wait and see if this storm holds and how well this roof holds, this rainfly. Because it wasn't for several hours after it started raining hard that I noticed it was leaking. So for right now, we'll just see how this works and hope for the best. The manufacturer, or not the manufacturer, but Academy's website states that there are 2 doors, which are right here, with a window in each, and you can see they've got a window in each, plus 6 additional windows. Now, I'm trying like the dickens to figure out where these 6 windows are. There's 2 here, and there's 2 over there. Where's the other 2? Now, I don't know if they consider the side of the screen porch as 2 windows. I don't know. There is a small opening in the back down low, so you could put a small air conditioner in here if you wanted to, if you had access to electricity. But I wouldn't consider that a window, even though you can close it up just like these windows, and there is a screen in it, which is nice, so you can open it up and have ventilation. But I wouldn't call that a window per se, and besides, that's only 1. So I don't know where they came up with 8 windows total, and they state it 3 times on the website. It says there's 2 doors with windows in each and 6 additional windows, and then it states it twice that there are 8 windows total. Where they're coming up with that number, I don't know. Maybe in a previous version of this tent, there were 2 windows in the back. God, I wish there was, because I love to open up a tent completely and have wind come through and a breeze. You know, I just love that. Plus, it would be nice for security to be able to look out the back. You know, if I hear something out the back, it'd be nice for security to be able to look. As for the frame that you saw me at the beginning of this video putting together, the frame is actually steel. True to their word, it is actually steel, which of course is going to rust, so we'll have to see how that lasts. And they are all shock corded. There is 1 main bridge pole here. There's a eave pole running across this direction, and you saw all this in the video. 8 legs, 4 on each side, and then 8 rafter poles. There are also 8 eave extensions that allow the rainfly to extend out past the sidewall, and I'll show you that in a little bit too. They are all steel, true to their word. However, the parts that snap together, those are all plastic. It's a hard plastic, so I don't know how well that's going to stand up. Time will tell both whether that plastic breaks and to see how much rain that these poles can take before they start to rust and become useless. That's going to be a problem somewhere down the line if I use this tent very much. The poles are also all color coded. And even though the ridge pole or the rafter poles and the leg poles are basically the same size, they are color coded, and the corner poles have a little hook on them to hook the rainfly down to. So there is a little bit of difference in those poles. Like I say, it's all color coded and it's very easy to set up. And in fact, it is not reversible. You can't set this up and then decide which way to set the tent. The poles are designed because this is 12 foot and that is 5 foot. There is a pole right outside this corner here. So they couldn't divide this space by 3 or by 4 or whatever and put evenly spaced poles. There's a pole halfway across here, so there will be a pole right here, and there's a pole here in the corner, and then 5 feet past that. So you've got 6, 6, and 5. So they're not evenly spaced. So to their credit, they actually mark these lengthwise poles as to say this is the screen porch end. So when you start to lay this out, there is a sticker on the pole saying this is your screen porch end, so you don't have to pick the whole frame up and turn it around just to get the porch on the side that you want it to. There is provisions for a screen divider, which I don't use. There are in these corners And you can probably see a little tag up there. And I don't know if it's going to be in the video, but there's one over there in that corner, just about this high. There are provisions for little triangular pockets, that gear pockets, and I don't use those either. Now, you're probably wondering why I purchased such a low-end tent. You know, $269 is not a lot for this size of a tent, so it's got to be cheap, right? Well, I got to tell you, outside of the fact that it did leak a little bit during that horrendous rainstorm that I first took it out and tried it out, we ended up getting 2.5 inches in less than a half an hour. So it just poured buckets. And there was a little bit of moisture. It was like somebody dipped their fingers in a bucket of water and sprinkled some here and sprinkled some here and a few drops over here. And during the night, I could feel a little bit of spray on my face. And what was happening was the water was coming down, getting on the mesh. And as the wind was whipping the tent a little bit, it would disperse that water into a little fine mist, and that's what was waking me up in the middle of the night. But other than that, it held up very well. I was surprised. I was laying there in bed just watching this thing with the lights on, and even though the fabric was flapping like tents all do in the wind, we had some 35, 40, 45 mile an hour winds and a few 60 mile an hour gusts, and I was not in the trees. I set up in the open because I wanted to test it. I never saw this thing shift or, you know, try to rack or anything like this. I just saw the fabric just do this. That's all I saw. It didn't seem like it was straining. Of course, I guide it down far more than the manufacturer suggests you do. So with that, but you're probably wondering why I chose such a cheap tent. Well, simply because of my age. I was looking at the economy of it. If I was 25 or 30 and looking forward to a whole lifetime of using a tent like this, I wouldn't have any problem spending $1,000 or $2,000. In fact, I was looking at far more expensive tents. I was looking at the Nemo Wagon Top 8. I was looking at the Browning Bighorn. I was looking at Outwells. I was looking at tents that aren't even sold in the United States to think, hey, if this is going to fit my needs perfectly, how could I actually get one sent to me? And I was simply looking at the economy of it. You know, at my age, if I spent $2,000 on a tent and used it 10 times, that's $200 a use. This tent was $300 out the door. This is the second time I've actually sent it up and used it. So right now it's about $150 a use. So I'm money ahead. Now, like I said, if I was younger and was looking forward to an entire lifetime, yeah, I'd probably buy a more expensive tent. But for what limited use I'm going to have for the rest of my life on a tent, this one is probably going to be just fine, because in a few years, maybe I'm not going to be able to do this anymore. My health is going to catch up to me, and I simply physically will not be able to go camping anymore. Or it just may not hold my interest anymore. I just say, forget it. I'm just going to sell all that stuff, or give it to Goodwill, or give it to the Scouts, or something like this. Or I have to look at my own mortality. I mean, I'm towards the end of my road. There's going to be a time where I'm no longer drawing breath on this world. So why sit there and spend money on a tent, you know, $1,000 or $2,000 or maybe even $3,000 in a tent, and use it a handful of times, and then, of course, you know, tents just don't hold their value. You could spend $2,000 on a tent, and you might be lucky to get a couple $100 out of it in a couple years, because people just don't want to buy a new used tent. So that's why I went with this one. For the price, I think it's a very good tent, especially if you just want to try tent camping for a large group. I don't think you can go wrong with spending this kind of money on a tent just to try it out, flaws and all. If you decide that you want to upgrade and stick with camping and upgrade to a better tent, yeah, fine, great. But if you simply want to try it to see whether it's for you, and, you know, do I like camping? Do I like this type of activity? You know, $300 is not that big of an investment these days to put into a tent like this to find out, well, I just don't like camping. I just can't comprehend somebody going out and spending thousands of dollars on a tent to try it once and say, nope, not for me. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this video up. I think we've covered all the bases here. I will say that I do use a tarp. You probably saw me set that up at the beginning of the video. I do use a tarp underneath as a ground cloth to protect the floor. I also have a 10 by 12 canvas tarp that I put down as a flooring material just to protect the top side of that floor, just to keep it lasting as long as possible. Plus it makes it a lot more comfortable to walk on. So with that, I will just go ahead and wrap up, because I think we've covered all the bases. So if you like my videos, be sure to click that like button, hit the bell. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share my videos. This is Backpack Hat coming at you with this trail tip. Be safe out there, and I'll see you out on the trail.